We are here to both determinedly, definitively, indubitably decide on what the top 10 dungeon crawlers of all time are, and I'm also going to give you my opinion. You get two lists for the price of one in this, the top 10 dungeon crawlers of all time. So what inspired this list is that over on our Discord, our patron-only Discord, we decided it shouldn't just be the YouTubers to be able to make fun top 10 lists. No, we all wanted to participate and talk about it and provide it as a lovely structure for conversation. And so a little while back, we all put forward our lists. We all revealed them 10, 9, 8, 7. It was a whole lovely, awesome conversation. And this here is the recap. Huge shout out to Vault Boy for doing most of the heavy lifting, pretty much all the heavy lifting, in organizing these stats. And so what I'm going to give you are my top 10 personal favorite dungeon crawlers. If you trust me above all other people, well, you should. This will tell you what I like and what those other peasants have gotten wrong. And then in addition, I'm going to give you, we have aggregated all of the lists together and come up with a comprehensive top 10 dungeon crawlers from a community. This is a community top 10 dungeon crawlers. And whenever I watched board game YouTube media and there was like a people's choice or a community pick, I always thought, those people don't know what they're talking about. I want to get the personality who I know. I want their opinion. And then when I started to become a personality myself, I realized how much more brilliant all other people are other than myself. And so I'm thrilled that we have both of these categorized together. So let's get into it, and then I'll tell you a little bit how these lists were determined while we get into it, but I've already talked enough, and you've already disappeared. First off, I think it's important to categorize what is a dungeon crawl. Webster's Dictionary defines dungeon as that place Chris invites you to have a good... No, sorry, that's a different video. That's the OnlyFans. We're working off of this category of dungeon crawler from Board Game Geek, which may be different than the dungeon crawling category that you have in mind. And in fact, that spurred a lot of discussion as some of these games that appeared on quite a few people's lists that are on and categorized as dungeon crawlers, we thought, does it really emphasize the dungeon crawling? Is it dungeon crawly enough? And we had numerous back and forth, but what we ended up on is everybody's list is different. Everybody's going to categorize things in a different way that makes sense for them. And that's why building all of this together provides a structure. But when I think of a dungeon crawler, I also think of these key things: a tactical combat or cooperative players versus environment overlord game with exploration and a story-based objective. Escape, kill the monster, do a thing. With character progression and leveling, equipment and loot. This is a huge one for me. I love getting loot in games. Puzzle solving. There could be different puzzles to do with the dungeon. You might need to solve that to get out. Random events and traps. Things appearing in new rooms as well. Another thing that Wikipedia also says is battling various monsters, which I think should really fit into here. The battling of the monsters feels kind of like a key element as well. Some other vehement descriptors were the idea of the reveal, that exploration, that it can't be a fixed map, that you're constantly exploring and you're going into a room and you never know what's going to happen. That sort of falls into that random events category. You don't know what will be revealed. Wherever you're navigating a labyrinth environment, battling various monsters, avoiding traps, solving puzzles, exploring and delving into a dungeon shape. But like any definition, these things can be stretched, right? And in fact, I realized through making this list that even through stretching, I don't play a lot of dungeon crawlers. Part of the reason why I think the community list is so exciting for me, and hearing other people's experiences and me just being able to be the mouthpiece of those experiences is very exciting for me as well. And so when I was making my list, I could have put 10 games on here. I've played 10 dungeon crawlers, but some of them I didn't really enjoy. And so I wasn't going to put games that I didn't enjoy on a top 10 dungeon crawling list. That seemed absurd to me. And so instead, my number 10 is the only one that I haven't personally played. I like all the other ones, but this is one that I'm very interested in trying. And so I threw it on my list as sort of a way to talk about it and to see if it would be on other people's lists as well. And spoiler alert, it was on a few other people's lists. This is Mice and Mystics. Mice and Mystics that came out in 2012 after being turned into mice. A prince and his allies experience giant size. It's a cooperative adventure game where you have to navigate your way now through this castle facing off cockroaches and cats and spiders and picking up all these cool items. And it's something I've never played, but I think it looks really cool. And it's something I've always been interested in exploring. I love the theme of being able to be these cool, badass mice running around like Tilda Swinton and Nez and Maginos. Oh yeah, let's zoom in. We'll get the full picture. Get the full picture. Mice and Mystics, I feel like it might be a little bit out of print. It's sometimes hard to find. It's still sitting at 436 on Board Game Geek, a 7.2 rating with 956 10s and only 41 1s. That seems pretty good. And I think what would really draw me into this game is not necessarily the mechanics of it even, it is the story. I feel that emphasis on story in a dungeon crawl and story-driven adventures of getting to a place and defeating these baddies is something that pulls me in, and I like that of all these little critters. So that was my honorary pick to get it in on my list. That's my number 10, Mice and Mystics. Now, how we determined the list for the community list, because we had over 50 different games, and we amalgamated some of those games if they were similar titles, or similar games of a system, let's say. But how we determined the point value to create a definitive top 10 list for our community, the Room and Board community, is very simple. If it was number 10 on your list, it got 1 point. If it was number 1 on your list, it got 10 points. Pretty simple, can't get much simpler than that. And then I also wanted to emphasize and put a little bit more weight on the games that appeared on multiple lists. So I think even making the top 10 is generally a pretty impressive feat to make, right? You've hit it, you've made the top 10, it's been included on a list, and I think everybody was taking this as seriously of putting things on a list that they enjoy playing to some extent. For me, Tainted Grail is not going to hit this list because I haven't really enjoyed Tainted Grail, even though I could argue that it falls under the category of dungeon crawler, right? You're exploring a story, you're flipping up different locations, you can interact with random events, you're leveling up your characters over the course of a campaign, sure, you're exploring a wide world map, but that might as well just be one big friggin' dungeon that you keep on delving back into. But I didn't include that on the list because I didn't want to, and I think that it has some relevance. And so you get your point value times the number of lists it appeared on, and that's how we determined our list. So showing up on 3 different lists, garnering a total of 18 points, which then multiplied by 3 is 54 points. Coming in at number 10, we have Warhammer Quest. And to be perfectly honest, I had never heard of Warhammer Quest until we did this list, but it sounds cool. And so Warhammer Quest, there were a couple of Warhammer Quest games that were put forward, and we almost didn't combine them into one section, but because they kind of fall under the general category, we threw them in there. It makes an honorable number 10. And it's the same thing. I mean, I feel like if I describe these games, they're all going to be the same thing because I generally describe games in kind of a high-level overview. And the high-level overview is, hey, it's a dungeon crawler where you take one of 4 characters and you level up and you get loot and you have yourself a good time. And I feel like I can say that in a lot of situations. So, yeah. Here's one of the Warhammer quests that was mentioned, Warhammer Quest Blackstone Fortress, exploring the depths of an ancient alien citadel to face the unknown horrors within, which sounds significantly better than this Warhammer Quest, to be honest. But this is our number 10, Warhammer Quest, the community's number 10, of being able to take that same Warhammer feel and now put it into a dungeon crawl instead of a skirmish game. Let's move along to my number 9, so we can keep this a bit snappy, okay? And this is one that I don't consider to be a dungeon crawler, but it is falling into this category of dungeon crawl. And so I said, great, I'm running low on titles to be able to put on this. I'll put this into my list, and that is Nemesis. Now, it's interesting to me in terms of Nemesis because it has a lot of key factors that I do enjoy in a dungeon crawl, but I don't really feel the sense of exploration that much, or the sense of what a typical dungeon crawler feels like to me. So that's why I did put it the lowest on my list, not necessarily because I like it the least out of these games. Whenever I do these sorts of lists, I always try to think about it in terms of how the game interacts with whatever I'm talking about. We just finished a whole top 10 about deck building, and so I tried to think about how much I enjoy the deck building aspect of it, or if there's other things that create enjoyment. And so for here, I really love Nemesis. I think it's a great game. It made my top 20 games. But it's not because it's a dungeon crawler, I love it. But it does have those sorts of elements. You're going to be navigating a spaceship, going across, exploring various rooms, flipping them over, looting those various rooms, potentially using those items to craft things, which I still haven't done, but I will in one game, and I'm sure it will lead to my inevitable victory, and fighting horrid creatures who are really just friggin' hard to fight. This dejected person right there is currently experiencing. Where it doesn't hit for me, and what I really do love about dungeon crawlers, and I feel gives that like RPG feeling, is the leveling up of your character. There's no real way to level up your character in Nemesis, and that's why it kind of falters down a bit for me. You start with your 10 cards, and if you're adding cards to your deck, well, those are wounds and infected cards, and you don't want that. So it's the opposite of leveling up your character. I suppose Lockdown does have a small element, the Nemesis Lockdown, the standalone expansion to Nemesis, which is interesting. It doesn't say re-implemented by Nemesis Lockdown. But Lockdown also has a track, maybe it'll show it over here. Over here, yeah, just in the corner. This track right here, this little science track, where you can level up your own knowledge, and that gives you access to certain advantages. So I suppose Lockdown does touch upon that aspect as well, but it's just a solid game. If you haven't played Nemesis, it's a very story-driven game. It gives you a real story experience, and that's why I love it. I'm going to stop talking about it and move on to our collective number 9, which appeared on 3 different lists, garnering a total of 19 points, just one ahead of Warhammer Quest, giving it a total of 57 points, and that is Etherfields. Etherfields, I think, for sure hits the puzzly nature of dungeon crawling. I quite enjoy Etherfields. I haven't played a lot of it, but I got the full all-in pledge because I thought to myself, this is Awakened Realms. I saw what they did with Nemesis. I want it, and I'm gonna find restraint. I'm gonna find restraint, and then somebody said, oh, you can save money on shipping if you buy the whole thing with me, and I said, yes, sold, done. Give me all the minis I don't need. But Etherfields is a fun game. One of my favorite parts about it, what really intrigued me about it, that has not a lot of bearing on the actual game itself, but it is these masks, these mask titles. And on the back of each one of these masks, you're going to have a special ability. But you don't know what those special abilities are, and they just say, like, pick a mask. Pick whichever mask feels like you right now. And I love that idea, that sort of dreamlike quality, that sort of intuitive quality of you choosing your own fate and choosing this special ability and getting these masks that just, like, speak to you and speak to your soul. And speaking to you on a soul level and not a mechanics level. And I think that's a lot of the game, is just trying to speak to you on that visceral soul level. You're going to be popping up these square cards, exploring different maps, exploring different dreams, and trying to find the secrets of them. One of the dreams that I have done, it comes early on in the game. It's not a spoiler, don't worry, but there are these number of doors that you'll find, and they lead to different places in the map, and you don't know where they lead or why they lead. But it turns out, if you were actually paying attention to your surroundings, you might have been able to figure out where they lead and why they lead. And I just love that riddle aspect of it and the puzzle aspect. I think it's a great production quality, and I like building up the deck. So it's currently been pretty fun. I look forward to getting it back to the table eventually and playing it a little bit more as it sprawls out everywhere. Oh wow, there's a picture of the world map that I haven't seen yet. Oh my goodness, did the entire game get spoiled for me? No, it didn't. It's just knowing that you're going to find more of the world map. The art's gorgeous. It's Awakened Realms, so obviously it's going to be gorgeous. And it's fun enough to go through and read some passages of chunky text and a bit cumbersome text and just have a good time as we now get into the prototype components and the shots of all the different minis that they have. Yeah, it's a unique, exciting experience, and that's what put it on three people's lists. So we're gonna move on to my number 8, which is Zombicide. Black Plague specifically Zombicide Black Plague. I've played Black Plague, Green Horde, White Death. All of the colors of Zombicide, I've played them. I haven't played the original, and I haven't played any of the space ones, but they're all basically the same. You're gonna run around, chucking dice, killing zombies. And I suppose the reason why this one is further down on the list too is because I also don't consider it to be that much of a dungeon crawl. Sure, you can open doors and you can find out what monsters are going to be in there. But to me, this and you can level up your character, which is great, and you can get a lot of loot, which is great. But it feels less about that exploration aspect. And I think that is important to me, the idea of exploring and feeling that sense of it being almost an RPG. And so that's why it's a little bit further down on the list for me as well. I think I actually like it. I think I like it more than 5 of the ones that are actually ahead of here, if I'm gonna be honest and want to play a game. But just like Nemesis, it is not the dungeon crawling aspect that draws me in. It's the dice chucking and feeling strong and powerful that makes me excited. If you haven't played Zombicide, I think it's absolutely worthwhile to do, as you try to complete the scenario and make sure everybody levels up at the same time so that you all don't die. It's just a fun game of having hordes and heaps of plastic on a table and just chucking some dice in, feeling like that. That's how you'll feel after playing Zombicide. So that was my number 8. And number 8 on our list, probably influenced by it being on my list. You can see I was one of the 4 people who put this on the next list. We are now into 4 people's list category, and that is back to Mice and Mystics. And I feel a little bit vindicated here. I put Mice and Mystics as kind of a throwaway. It got a total of 60 points. 4 lists, 15 points, and so makes it into our number 8. You can see that Etherfields and Warhammer Quest, and actually a few others, had more total points than Mice and Mystics. So if we weren't giving weight to it being on multiple people's lists, then it might have fallen down, but it still would have made our collective list if it wasn't on mine, because it would have been 3 times 14, and that would have blown out the number 11 anyway. So I feel vindicated that it was on so many other people's lists as well, and that they enjoyed it, and that it is memorable. And I think it's the theme that creates it into a memorable experience. Also, it being a nice, accessible title that you can play a lot of and you can potentially get younger kids into, for sure helps it shoot up on the list. And if I'd done this video earlier, I don't think it would have made it, because it didn't have enough votes. But some other people who joined the Discord and joined the Patreon since then, who have added in their dungeon crawling list to the mix, that has shifted things around. And so that's also kind of fun. So that's our number 8, our collective number 8. We don't really need to talk about it too much. And we can go back over to my number 7, which is from Chip Theory Games, and this is Burncycle. Burncycle, I have really mixed feelings about Burncycle, but I still lean on the side of enjoyment. I have a whole review about Burncycle if you want to get more into the weeds about my thoughts, but I'm just going to talk about the parts that I like in this one, because it did make my list, and so I might as well talk about the things that I like and why it did make my dungeon crawling list. You're going to be playing as one of these variable characters, which I love, and throughout the game, you can upgrade their skills and unlock their special skills, and then you're going to be sneaking around this area. You're going to be trying to sneak and hack your way into different levels of the mission. And oftentimes, this will require you to go to 3 different levels of mission and then escape, right? 3 different floors, doing different things, facing different baddies and sentries as they patrol the corridors. And that's the aspect that I find really intriguing. I find it really intriguing being able to have different exciting skills that you can level up as you crawl through. I think it hits the exploration a little bit. Not too much, though, because most of the maps are known to you. If you wanted to, you could even look at what level 2 looks like and what level 3 looks like, because you have the blueprints, right? It's a heist sort of game, so you're breaking in to the map itself. So not really exploration, isn't really hit there, but the aspect of physically moving around the map and interacting with the components that the map gives you is the best part. There's a bunch of other stuff that I don't like, and I think I don't like it because it takes away from my time with the main map itself. Oh yeah, these are the little brass mags that Chip Theory can sell you for a crazy price. Like, most of their stuff is a crazy price. Like, this is a very expensive game, and I think you really need to know if you are going to enjoy it, if you even want to contemplate picking it up. I was fortunate enough that it got sent to me for review, and so I didn't have to purchase it, and so I am able to experience it and not feel like I need to get my money's worth out of it. But I still think it was a really fun time, and I like going through and picking up these different components and chips, and I've delved into it enough to feel comfortable with it so that I could set it up and play it pretty quickly. But yeah, navigating the map was exciting here for me, so that's why it was my number 7. Now, moving on to the community's number 7, we have, again, something that was just on my list in terms of Zombicide. And this was us combining all of the Zombicide franchises that people said other people liked different ones, but they're basically all the same. This was on 4 lists, garnering 17 points total, giving it a 68-point total. And there's not really much more to say about it, so I guess we'll move on. Let's move on to number 6. My number 6 also has been mentioned on the list. You'll see there's a lot of crossover between the communal list and my list because I do intrinsically have great taste, or maybe I just play the popular things. But don't worry, we're going to have a rapid fire of all the ones that didn't make the list. If you're craving for more dungeon crawling, you can at least know that someone out there categorized one of these games as a dungeon crawler at some point in time and enjoyed it. So my number 6 is Etherfields. As you could tell when I was talking about it when it appeared in our communal list, I really like this game. I feel like I might have rated it the highest out of everybody. If I rated it 6th, then I was giving it 4 points. Oh no, so it got another 15 points from the other 2 people that put it on the list. So I must have rated it the lowest then. Yeah, I've really enjoyed my experience with it. I want to actively delve into it again, and I can't wait to do so. I think that it's a fun campaign, and the leveling up of your character over that campaign and increasing your deck's cool abilities or whatever. I'm really looking forward to developing my deck as that game goes on. But it's not about me, it's about something that hasn't been mentioned yet. And this, again, is sort of a combo of things because there is a legacy version of this and there is a non-legacy version, and we kind of smushed them together. But it appeared on 5 people's lists, garnering 30 points, getting into that 150-point range. This is Betrayal at House on the Hill, or Betrayal Legacy. I've played both Betrayal at the House on the Hill and Betrayal Legacy. I'm about halfway through a campaign of Betrayal Legacy, and that's the problem with campaigns, is that I got to play a lot of different stuff, and I never have time to go back to things. But I would go back to this because I've been enjoying it. And I think Betrayal Legacy, I was saying this the other day to somebody, I think it is the optimal way to play Betrayal because it feels a little bit more streamlined. This, however, really captures that sense for me of exploration. I think that's why it appeared on a lot of people's lists, because it's basically see what room you're in, see what event happens, see if you can pick up some cool loot, and then we'll deal with the story consequences later. We'll deal with whatever happens later. But what matters is the exploration. The exciting part is exploring the house and seeing the different arrangement that's going to happen every time, and the different stories that are going to happen every time because of all the potential scenarios that can come out. And so that's why it is, I think, on a lot of people's lists, making it a solid number 6. I find with Betrayal, like, if you want a strategy game, don't play Betrayal. Just don't do it. There's like no strategy here. It's all environment, and it's all just fun and seeing what happens, right? It requires very little investment from the people who are playing, even if there is roles and rules for winning and losing. Like, oftentimes, based upon how the house has come out, makes it already feel like the outcome's decided. This is a very funny, who's a naughty bad traitor? That's right, you are. Whoever becomes a traitor has to go take a picture of themselves. That's a required prop for banishing the traitor to the next room. That's very funny to me. But yeah, it's all about that exploration, right? And so if that's your jam, well, it's a very respectable number 6. Now on to my personal number 5. This is one that isn't going to appear later on. That's for sure. I mean, I have others that won't appear later on as well. But this is Arkham Horror, specifically the second edition. I've only played the second edition. This one would have fallen 17th on our total list, mainly because I think I put it up so high. No, it was the same. It would have been the same ranking. I think somebody else must have put it down a bit lower. It got 10 total points on 2 lists, and one of those lists would have been me. But Arkham Horror, now we're getting really into what embodies a dungeon crawl. It's a long, epic adventure of going to different areas and having these random events happen. I suppose you're not really uncovering anything. There's no real exploration that's happening in here, but the amount of monsters that are popping out and swarming the city that you have to run through and deal with, the amount of random events that you have to deal with, the amount of excitement that leveling up your character over the course of the game can give you, and the map also shifts as things happen and stores close, as the terror track raises and people become aware that, you know, a giant elder god is going to burst through the nether regions of society. Is that the portal? The netherworld, the nether realm? Yeah, the nether regions, right? The nether regions of Arkham. I'm pretty sure that's the right thing. This game holds a very fond place in my heart. It's pretty simple when it comes down to it. You're going to have these monsters that you're going to be killing. They're going to have a health stat and an insanity, a mental strike, or a physical strike against yourself. You can get weapons that can help you. You can get blessings that can make it so much easier to hit successes. You need to roll a 5 and a 6 to get a success in this game. Or if you're blessed, you need to roll a 4, 5, and a 6. So it really increases your percentages by a heck of a lot. And there's just something fun about trying to run and hope that you encounter the correct things. And there's so many different locations and different encounters that you can have throughout the game that it really hits that killing monsters, getting loot, having random encounters, feeling of a game that you sometimes want to have. I haven't played this in a long while, but it is holding its own off the backs of its nostalgia and my enjoyment of it. And so I definitely wanted to put it in my top 5. And so it just makes the cut for sure. On to our collective top 5. This is a game that I do not own yet, but it was on 5 lists, garnering 35 points, making the total 175. That's right, it's Cthulhu Death May Die. I backed the latest Kickstarter campaign for Season 3. I didn't get Season 4 with it. I restrained myself because I've never played the game before and I don't know if I'll like it. But judging by how much people do like it, I think I will. Another Cthulhu theme. Oh, it's kind of funny that Arkham Horror and Cthulhu, they matched up. I'm in sync, at least, with the people. And the big thing about this is that it's going to be scenario-based. Oh, look at those. Pretty cool. I just saw this quickly, and I really thought this guy was giving the finger, and his flames, his fingers were on fire. I thought that would be very funny. A very funny sculpt. But the whole premise of this, it's even the description is tongue-in-cheek, and I like that a lot. You start the game insane, and while your long-term goal is to shoot Cthulhu in the face, at some point you'll probably fail to mitigate your dice rolls properly, and your insanity will cause you to do something terrible. Or maybe advantageous. Who could know? And so you really have to monitor your insanity as you're going through and trying to defeat all the cultists and then eventually defeat the big bad, right? You're going through this progression of a level. There's going to be this end boss at the end. There are these multiple different scenarios. They're divided into chapters to give you different things to fight, combined with the different types of characters that you can, that's cool, that you can add to your roster and play with and level up. It is super well regarded, and I'm very excited to play it for myself, but that ends up being our collective number 5. I'll let you know what I think when it ends up dropping or getting to my door. On to my number 4, and I had to include this here because I think it is a really solid game, and the dungeon crawling aspect of it makes sense to me and is sort of the highlight of the game, and that's Gloomhaven. It's number 3 overall. It used to be number 1, but now Pandemic Legacy and Brass are ahead of it. It's been re-implemented now by Gloomhaven 2nd Edition, which is coming out. Apparently changes everything and makes your first one all incomplete, but I'm talking about the first one. I quite enjoy Gloomhaven. I would like to play more of it. I think if I did play more of it, my rating of it would go up. Right now it's around, I don't know, 3.5? It's like a 7. Look, it's fine. It's good. But I can see the potential. I haven't experienced the potential yet, but I can see the potential. And if I kept on playing, I know it would probably go up. What I do love about this, though, want to see some boards, some actual scenarios. Well, no, that's just a heap of junk on table. Give me something else. Yeah, there's a kind of a scenario. It's just one room. Is that a scenario? Maybe that's a demo. Seems like it'd be a demo because it says it was at Essen Spiel 2016. But I do love this idea of the rooms. You can create your own dungeons as you go through, or you can play through the campaign, which has like 100 scenarios. So why do you need to? And you can see the creation of the rooms. So that's the first scenario right there. I recognize that. Hasn't been that long. You're going to go through, you're going to use your abilities to obliterate baddies. You're then going to choose what next dungeon you're going to delve into, and you're going to do the whole thing. Everything is in perfect dungeon crawling theme. The cycle of playing this game will be so consistent of, here's a scenario, go fight. And that's what I honestly do appreciate, that consistency of, I don't know what. You can see people trying to take a good picture of this, and there's just so much stuff that you could never take a picture of a table that looks organized. I think probably ever. Probably ever. There we go. That's a bit nicer, isn't it? I really do also love the card play of Gloomhaven, but I'm not weighing that in this dungeon crawling ranking. I want more the exploration, and I guess how you level up your cards is also exciting. What's more to say? It's Gloomhaven. It's good. It's gonna be good. There's nothing more to say, but for me, it hits around a number 4. It's not the epitome of dungeon crawling experiences. I like my top 3 more. If I'm looking for a dungeon crawling experience, I will turn to the top 3 before I turn to Gloomhaven. But I had to give it sort of its place of honor. Although in terms of like my desire to play it, it could maybe go down to number 7, if I'm being honest. I think Etherfields I would play more sooner. I'd play Arkham Horror sooner. Maybe it's on par with Burncycle. I'd want to get both to the table around the same amount. So that's my number 4, Gloomhaven. Over to our community number 4, coming in on 6 different lists with a total of 42 points, putting it at 252 points total. We have Massive Darkness 2. Massive Darkness 2 is incredible. It's so good. And what is particularly exciting about this are the variants in classes. Myself and my friend Zach, we have a whole 1-hour video talking about the differences between Zombicide and Massive Darkness 2, going back and forth as to which one's better, which one's more enjoyable, what are the differences. And here, I feel like this does capture a lot of really great dungeon crawling aspects. There are these door cards where every time you enter a room, you flip over a door card, which creates a random event. So it's not just how many monsters, how many zombies are in here. It's a whole new thing might happen. It might be good. It might be bad. There is danger into opening a door that you do not know. And I think that's really cool in terms of capturing the progression. I also think in terms of leveling up your character, you get more from Massive Darkness 2 than you do Zombicide, because you get to choose your skills as you level up. And the skills are different cards, and there's different tech trees and different pathways that you can go up. It's really good. I'm not surprised it found itself on 6 different lists, even being so new. I mean, I guess it's not that new. 2022? Yeah, it's only a year old. In the idea of like Kickstarters and the cycles of things and things delivering, this was a really fun one to receive. I backed this on Kickstarter as well, and I'm very happy that I did because it's awesome. It really is. So this is why it is our collective number 4, which actually I have made a mistake. I've made a mistake on my numbering because I look ahead and this is actually our collective number 3, but because of how the spreadsheet is, a glimpse of the spreadsheet right here, you can see it says 4 Massive Darkness 2. I'll blur this out so you don't know what's coming. But up here it says number 1 is Game. And yes, while I do agree that Game is a good one, um, I also realized that game is great. Don't get me wrong. Game is, I love game. I have many thoughts towards game. I realize the Massive Darkness is actually our collective number 3. But so what I'll do, this is fine, because I really just wanted to put myself on top anyway, but I wanted to talk about my number 1 last. So we're going to keep on going in this realm. I'm going to do my number 3, then it'll be 2, etc. And when we get to the end, we're going to go back and I'm going to tell you about the 3-way tie that actually is number 10. So that's how we're gonna rectify this as we move forward. Congratulations, Massive Darkness. You just moved up 1 spot. Game's disqualified, but Massive Darkness 2 is our collective number 3. And speaking of number 3, my number 3 is Betrayal Legacy. And really, I don't necessarily think that this is that good of a game. Like, I don't. But I think in terms of the dungeon crawling aspect, that's what I love about it. That's what I crave. If I want a dungeon crawler, I will play Betrayal because it ticks off so many of those boxes for me. And I think that's kind of an interesting thing for me to realize. I talked a lot about Betrayal when we covered it in our collective list, so I don't feel the need to talk too much more about it. But yeah, the reason it is super high up is not because it's a great game. I think it's just fine. But I think you can have fun with just fine things, and I love the sense of exploration that it gives. So that's why it made its way so far up on my list. Anyway, moving along to our collective number 2. It has already been talked about on this list, and it is what I put as my number 9. It got 7 votes on 7 people's lists with 44 points total, giving it 308 points as a final tally. This is Nemesis, or Nemesis Lockdown. It's combined because they're the exact same system, the exact same game. If you want the differences, well, myself and Zach also have a video breaking both down. And so this is an interesting one, right? Because there was a lot of talk about, Nemesis isn't a dungeon crawler. We hate Nemesis. We love dungeon crawlers. Board Game Geek is an idiot. Because Board Game Geek did put Nemesis in its dungeon crawling category, or more specifically, I guess Awakened Realms put Nemesis in the dungeon crawling category, and it's not something that I would have typically thought of as a dungeon crawler, but it has a lot of this stuff. Random events in terms of what's going to be in the room that you go into. Traps. There might be fire. Puzzle solving. Not really puzzle solving. I mean, as far as every game has puzzle solving, sure. But equipment and loot, for sure. Character progression now is in lockdown, and more the idea of that exploration, which I think is important. The idea of story-driven goals, right? I think that's what puts it so high up. And I also think that Nemesis is just a really good game that people will put on a list because, hey, if it's kind of a dungeon crawler, it's exploration, yeah, let's put it on there because it is just really, really good if you love story-driven experiences. It creates such a thematic game that it feels memorable. And that's what I personally love about Nemesis, and I think a lot of people love it as well. So that's our collective number 2, Nemesis or Lockdown. It doesn't matter which one. Could be the regular, could be not. Strangely, I feel like the original feels more dungeon crawly to me. Why that is? I don't know. It's probably the scenario. It's probably being on a ship and being lost at sea, more isolated, rather than in a bunker with 3 levels. I don't know. It just feels that way. So that's what I'm going to tell you. Anyway, that's our number 2. My number 2 has not been mentioned yet. No crossover. I was the only person to put this on my list, and I'm very proud that I did because I was unique. But also because I really feel this captures dungeon crawling in such an incredibly interesting and exciting way and a unique way, and I love unique games. I've made a custom insert for this so I can get it to the table more frequently. I don't know if I have gotten it to the table since making that custom insert, but it's still fun, and that's Catacombs, the dexterity-based dungeon crawler. This really is a dexterity-based dungeon crawler. You see all these little discs. They're different monsters who have different stats, and you're going to be playing on a large board, and the heroes down here, you can see, look at all these heroes down there. Look at all the heroes. There's a lot of heroes. I mean, these are expansions. You get 6 in the base game, and then you have all the villains up here. Seems like that'll be a tough battle to fight. Anyway, you flick your way through, and most of the villains have like 1 or 2 health points, and you have like 6 or 7. as the heroes. It's one versus all. So one player will play all of the villains, and then each player will play their individual hero. Or if you're playing one versus one, then you get a team of like 4 heroes. It's always 4 heroes. You'll go through a session, you'll get gold, and then you'll face another dungeon. You'll face another dungeon. And then, oh, you might discover a merchant, or you might discover a tavern. So the overlord, the game master, basically will set this up beforehand. You can see these are the initial heroes from the base game and the initial villains from the base game. You'll set this up beforehand, and then you'll pull out one of the maps and put the obstacles in the way, and then have to flick and fight each other. It's super fun and really gives you that progression of going through a literal dungeon to fight a big boss at the end. And if you defeat the boss, you win. If you don't, you lose. It's a great game. It really is a good game, and gives such a unique twist on the genre that, like, I had to put it as close to the top as possible. But it can't be my number one, because my number one is in my top 10 games of all time. But you'll figure that out after I tell you about our collective number one, which appeared on 11 lists, garnering a total of 98 points, giving it a final score of almost 3 times, more than 3 times actually, its closest competitor. Nemesis Lockdown had 308 final points. This one has 1,078. And of course, it has to be Gloomhaven, right? I think it was always going to be Gloomhaven in a sort of collective list of dungeon crawlers. There are going to be enough people who have played Gloomhaven and love it. There's a reason why it was the number one board game for 5 years. It's because people love this game, and I don't really need to say much more about it than that. And honestly, going through this list and hearing people talk about it passionately, it made me want to get more into it. It did. Because I trust all of the people who are sharing their thoughts. I trust that they've loved it so much, and I'm excited to get back into it. I think I might try to hook in my girlfriend to play Jaws of the Lion with. I think that might be fun before delving back into the main big box. It also doesn't help that the person who I was playing the main big box with isn't a huge fan of board games, and so, like, he got it for me as a gift, and so I said, okay, I got to play it with you, but his time's up, and I think I'm going to play it with somebody else who will enjoy it with me. Even still, Gloomhaven takes top spot. Gloomhaven, Frosthaven, same game. Just like all the Zombicide should be combined, Gloomhaven and Frosthaven should be combined as well. And Jaws of the Lion was thrown in there as well, too. So I think some people separated them on their lists, and I think that's been counted into this, but it's all being lumped together because, well, just because it just makes sense. So that's our collective number one. Moving on along to my number one, which was on this list already. I tried to tone down my excitement for it, but it's Massive Darkness 2. This made my top 10 games of all time, and it's so new to me, and I just love it so much. I love all the classes. I love the scenarios. I even love how easy it is. This is just such a fun game. There's so much emphasis on the fun, and so much emphasis on, like, you feeling cool, and like you're unlocking all these cool skills, and every asymmetrical character plays differently, but is really, really great. I haven't missed. None of them have missed for me that I've played so far. And I've seen all of the characters from other people playing them as well, but I just haven't personally experienced them. Even some of the basic ones, like the Barbarian. I didn't think the Barbarian would be any cool, but the Barbarian was cool. Barbarian was really cool. So yeah, it just has been such a lovely friggin', I'm so happy I ended up backing this. I really am. This was backed on a whim. I didn't have any impulse control, and this is the time where it did work out. Oh, that was a cool paint job on the boards. I have a way of putting all of your Kickstarter stuff into basically one box, which I'm also pretty happy about. My buddy Zach is currently painting all of my stuff while I'm away for the summer, and he's been sending me pictures, and they're so good. I'm going to put a couple up on the screen right now, works in progress, because they're awesome. Yeah, it's just like a friggin' blast. I guess the rogue character was kind of just okay. I wasn't like crazy about the bag building aspect of it, but it still was pretty fun. Oh yeah, I didn't even talk about this. This is one of the main reasons why it did become my number one, because of the loot you get, and you can craft better loot with that. If you find an anvil, you can go to the anvil, and you could discard 3 loot of a previous tier to get 1 loot of a tier above. And that just feels so good, because it means you always want to be gobbling up loot. You want to be fighting the people so they drop loot. This feels like Diablo, the board game. It captures that feeling of loot explosions in the RPG that I just love so much. Yeah, it's just great. So now we go, finally, that was my number one, and let's go back in time to our collective number 10, tied for 10th. We have 3 games. They were on 2 lists. None of these are my lists as well. So 2 different people garnering a total of 16 points, which is pretty good. If it had just gotten in on anyone else's list, it would have kind of burst through. But it didn't. Still, they beat Mice and Mystics on the total point value as well for not multiplying it by the lists. Anyway, we have Arkham Horror, the card game, tied with Descent, tied with Mage Knight. All 3 of these got 16 points total with 2 people on 2 people's lists. And yeah, I always shy away from Arkham Horror, the card game, but I've heard it's exceptional. I just stay away from living card games because they scare me and my addictive personality. Descent, I've heard good things. I also have felt like, I know the 3rd edition wasn't received that well, and people say it's completely different. But I don't know, reading about this, where players build their dice pools according to their character's abilities and weapons, and then it contributes to an attack in each way, that seems kind of cool. I like that. And then Mage Knight, I've heard nothing but incredible things about. I really need to try it, because I know it's also like a really good deck builder as well, combining elements of RPGs, deck building, and traditional board games, just creating this huge universe. But I know it's a huge time investment as well in order to get it to the table. So I want someone to teach me Mage Knight. I don't want to learn it by myself. I think that's how I want to approach it. But yeah, that's our number 10. Those are all the ones that were tied for number 10 as our collective opinion. But that's it. Those are our collective lists. Once more, to run it down, our collective list. In 10th place, Descent, Arkham Horror, the card game, and Mage Knight. Then Warhammer Quest, Etherfields, Mice and Mystic, Zombicide, Betrayal, Cthulhu Death May Die, Massive Darkness 2, Nemesis or Nemesis Lockdown, and then Frosthaven, Gloomhaven, Jaws of the Lion. My own personal list was Mice and Mystics, Nemesis, Zombicide, Black Plague, Burncycle, Etherfields, Arkham Horror, Gloomhaven, Betrayal Legacy, Catacombs, and Massive Darkness 2. A much better list, I think. Actually, I'm pretty sure that the collective list is better than mine. Just I'm fairly certain about it. If you wanted to see a cool visual of it, this is our visual representation of what's taking up the most votes as well. We have Frosthaven, Nemesis, Massive Darkness, Cthulhu Death May Die, right? Betrayal, Zombicide, Mice and Mystics, Etherfields, Warhammer Quest, Arkham Horror, Descent, Mage Knight, and then also coming in was ISS Vanguard, Tiny Epic Dungeons, and Mansions of Madness, making up some slice of the pie. And then really, I'm just going to run through from top to bottom. Mansions of Madness coming in at 15. I'm just going to run through and then talk about things that kind of pop out to me. So then 16 down, we have Arkham Horror, Bard Sung, Final Girl on 2 lists. People think Final Girl is a dungeon crawler. Hey, and if you like it, great. I don't care. I want you to have fun with your lists. Star Wars Imperial Assault, want to try that one. Burncycle, Clank, Claustrophobia, 1643, Dungeons and Dragons as the OG dungeon crawler. One thing I do want to point out is that Claustrophobia is the only, and Dungeons and Dragons were number 1 on people's lists. They only got mentioned 1 time, but they were number 1 on people's lists. And I think that's worth talking about and giving them a shout out as well. Of course, Spicify was also 1 on someone's list, but we're not gonna talk about that one. Artisans of Splendid Vale. Now we're getting into people's sort of second. These are people's number 2. Also R25. Artisan of Splendid Vale, Catacombs, Dice Throne Adventures, Madara, Lord of the Ring, Journeys in Middle Earth, 2 people ranked it lower. Eldritch Horror, Burgle Bros, 2 people ranked that one lower as well. Lifeform, Stuffed Fables, Darklight Memento Mori, Firefly, Brigands and Browncoats, Explore It, Domin. I know that's an acronym, but I forget what it is right now. Core Space, Slay the Spire, Aftermath, Darkest Dungeon, Dungeons and Dragons, the board game, The Others, Alien Another Glorious Day in the Corp, Dungeon Roll, Dungeon Universalis, Hellboy the board game, and Shadows of Brimstone. Those were all games that hit somebody's top 10 dungeon crawlers, just to go down the list in terms of our honorable mentions. Click the wrong button there. So that's the video. We're calling it here. Thanks so much for watching. Share your own dungeon crawlers down below, your own definitions of a dungeon crawler. What do you take umbrage with in this list? Which was missed, which you wish was higher, which you wish got highlighted, for all those other dungeon crawler fans out there. But yeah, I think it's pretty cool representation, a pretty cool community of people voting. So thank you to all of my patrons for just being rad and fun to hang out with and making a really lovely community. Thanks everybody for watching. I love being able to share that with you as well. And I hope you all have a wonderful day and find yourself your own dungeons to crawl through. Anyway, my name's Chris George, and you know what? I do not have a catchphrase. I never have, and I never will. And one of these days, I'll play more dungeon crawlers. Actually, I'm really excited. I really enjoyed the deck building one more because I like the mechanic a lot more. And so you'll probably get a recap of that at some point. But if you want all the stats, well, sign up for Room and Board Patreon, I guess. Hey, no, it's not an ad. I'm just letting you know that, well, I guess, yeah, it's an ad. You're still here. You just like me a little bit amount, some small amount. She was stuck with me after my sign off. I'll see you in the Discord, I guess, because I know it's just you, all my buds watching. Anyway, thanks for being here. I'll see you later.